Recording in progress.
Good evening. I hereby call this meeting of the Greenbelt City Council to order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Good evening. Ms. McKinney?
She's on Zoom.
Present.
Ms. Pompey?
Here.
Ms. Pope?
She's on travel.
Ms. Niesel?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Ms. Weaver?
Here.
Mayor Jordan?
I'm here. Please join us in a moment of silent reflection, thinking about Greenbelt residents and others who have passed away since the last council meeting, and want to consider Leslie Davies Hilliard. Please join us in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is a Greenbelt City Council meeting. We meet 2 times a month, except for August, on Mondays to make decisions, set policy, take formal actions. Our meetings are always open to the public, except for executive sessions as authorized by state law, so that residents and others can observe council's deliberations during these sessions. We do strive to provide reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on matters being considered, and we'll pause periodically tonight for public comment. During these times, if you wish to address council or to ask a question of the administration, raise your hand if you're in the room, and after being recognized, you can go over to the podium. You need to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt, more or less. We need that for the minutes. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your virtual hand and we'll promote you once you are recognized. Or you can submit a written question to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube or cable TV, you can submit a comment or question to the email address questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So as far as public statements during the meeting, we will pause periodically. Please, the comments must be about 3 minutes long. And during petitions and requests, which is the next section of the agenda, we ask that you hold your comments to 5 minutes or less. And if there's a number of you on the same topic, please appoint one spokesperson to present the information. And as always, we are neighbors, so please be considerate of others in your comments, and we're all neighbors here. So at this time, I'd like to actually move to the petitions and requests section of the agenda. Are there any petitions or requests? I see one hand. Actually, I see Ms. Uderman. Are you there?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're here with some of my fantastic camp colleagues with a surprise for City Council. We do this pretty much every year. We have an annual bake sale at Camp Pine Tree and raise funds to contribute to our Kids to Camp Fund. So, Gerald, would you like to stand up and come and introduce your colleagues, please?
Hi, my name is Gerald. I work at Camp Pine Tree. I'm one of the managers there. Here we have Quinn, who's one of our yoga managers there. Here we have Lena next to him. She's one of our campers. And we also have Mecca, who is also another one of our Camp Pine Tree counselors here.
This is fantastic. Hey, what do you have in your hand there?
So we'd like to present this check. Please go and approach City Council and present the check for $700.
Whoa,
that we raise
$700.
to help fund our Kids to Camp.
And that's for the Kids to Camp Fund, which actually helps if someone wants to attend the Greenbelt camps over the summer. money is not a concern. We will find a way to make that possible. So with that check for $700, I'd like to ask you and the other representatives of the camps to actually come forward. We'll take a picture. Who knows? The Greenbelt News Review might actually publish that. So why don't you come forward? And council, why don't you stand up so we'll all be in the picture? Thank you, thank you. That is fantastic. So, Ms. Udeman, just a couple of questions. Number one, if someone wants to make a contribution to that fund, how can they go about sending a check?
They can reach out to us at any of our business offices and our recreation centers. We do have a lot of folks that make annual donations. And as a matter of fact, when families register for camp, there's an opportunity for those families to make a donation. So we have a lot of generous people and organizations in Greenbelt, and it's very, very helpful for those families that struggle, to send their children to camp financially. So we're very grateful for the many generous folks and organizations that help us send more kids to camp every summer.
No, it's fantastic. And $700, those must have been some awfully big muffins you were selling there.
We do. We sell all kinds of sweet treats. The community comes out and supports us. The campers and the staff do a lot of baking and other creative sweet treat preparation. And the community comes out. People look forward to it every year.
That's fantastic. And speaking of the summer camps, I walk around the city during the day, and I see so many smiling faces running, engaged in all these different activities. So how much longer do we have? We're in the final segment of the day camps.
This is our final week of the summer.
Okay.
It's happy, sad. I mean, happy that our hard work is coming to an end and we can take a pause before Labor Day, a short pause before Labor Day. But we miss the kids. Our facilities and are filled with, as you say, happy campers, and it's a joy to be part of that.
Yeah, it really is a joy, and I hear from people all from Greenbelt, but all sorts of surrounding communities about how they struggle sometimes to actually get in the camps because they are very, very popular because they are affordable and they are substantive. So the kids have a good time, they're happy, but they're also learning different things. So
Absolutely.
we take great pride in the summer camps. And I know on behalf of council, we want to thank you for all the work you and the recreation staff and the volunteers do throughout the summer and throughout the year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, Ms. Neeser, please.
I just wanted to say, Quinn and Mecca, my kids have had both of you this summer and loved you. We've had such a great time at Greenbelt Camp, so thank the staff as well because you really bring so much heart to our programs.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. So at this time, we move to petitions and requests. Mr. Williams, please.
New Orleans, I don't have a check for council, nor will I keep it very long tonight. I will note for the record that I have several outstanding petitions to which I've received responses over the months and years, which I continue to disagree with. The responses I continue to disagree with. However, there's still one outstanding petition I've made of council that I've yet to receive even an unsatisfactory response to, and that is that council in closed session, obviously without public comment, in closed session voted to allocate funds to the former interim city manager. And my question remains the same. I'm looking forward to an answer as to under what statute in closed session, obviously without public participation, council can vote to allocate money for any purpose, much less as a bonus to a senior member of the staff. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if there are no additional petitions or requests, we need to go ahead and take a look at the consent agenda and approve that. I do want to pull one item off the consent agenda, and that would be item number 22. So I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to pull number 20, please.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? Mr. Roberts? Would you like to make a motion to approve the consent?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes asked.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mayor Pro Temp has seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And now we're going to move to the agenda itself. And I have a couple of modifications, just shifting things around a little bit because, we're always thinking of, the public and the attention span. So by clustering presentations together, sometimes it makes the meetings move a little bit faster. So I'd like to move item 7B to item number 13. So 13 and 12, both of the chief's presentations will be together. And I'd like to move items number 14 and 15 to the end of the meeting. I guess they'd be items number 26 and 27. Any other modifications proposed for the agenda?
So 13 and 14, you're moving to the end?
14 and 15.
14 and 15. Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Niesel has seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? The motion carries. Our agenda is now approved. So at this time, we're going to move to the presentation section of the agenda. And the first item is recognition of the Greenbelt police officers that were involved in the activities here, the tragic activities that took place on April the 19th, 2024. Officers from the Greenbelt Police Department responded to Schramm Hills Park for a large crowd. While on the scene, 2 suspects injured 5 people when they discharged firearms into the crowd. The officers recognized the severity of the events and rushed in the direction of the gunfire without regard for their personal safety. The officers provided life-saving medical care while helping to facilitate a criminal investigation that resulted in the arrest of 2 suspects. This exemplary effort is now being acknowledged and recognized formally by the police department in the way of commendations for their outstanding bravery and dedication to the public, and just acknowledging these acts of heroism, which actually could have saved lives, did in fact save lives. So, Police Chief Bowers, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having us this evening. It's an honor to come before you tonight and share this with you, as well as members of the city. It's not every day that we have an event that occurs like that, fortunately, and the response of all the members of the organization that day and the days that followed in terms of conduct of investigation and closeout of the case was exceptional police work. And this is an opportunity to recognize the work that they did that day on scene and the work that came as follow-up to that. Before I start too far, I would like to just kind of serve as a reminder to the events of that day. We have the video recued, the body cam footage that we showed you briefly. So I'll have that run again for you, and then we'll get into the actual awards presentations themselves.
Okay, let's cue up the video.
Maybe.
So, there we go. There we go.
Got it. There we go.
Charles was at 6927, 6927. 35 shots fired. What's the shot fired? 13. Signal 13, shots fired. Shots fired. 1453, shots fired. What's your location? I'm at Strom Hills. Strom Hills, shots fired. All units responded, shots fired. Strom Hills.
You know, it makes me shudder to see that. So much more could have gone wrong. And if it weren't for the heroism and the sense of duty and the action, ready to take action of our police department, I mean, just the situation could have been so much worse.
Absolutely, Mayor, and that's why we're, the recognition that we're here today. The video doesn't always show you the chaos that happens when 700 people are in a confined space, and then you have a violent event like this that injured 5 young people in our community, and that the officers responded to, risking their own lives. What you can't hear in one of the videos is you can actually hear bullets go past the officers in their body cam. It's not in this video. So the officers' lives were in danger as these rounds passed by where they were standing. We know that there were multiple shots fired. And the officers responded and performed a variety of tasks, including first aid, life-saving first aid, scene security, criminal investigation. So the first group of individuals that I would like to recognize today are those officers that are receiving a letter of commendation. And if I could get the following officers to come to the front. Officer J.P. Dang.
Okay.
And Lieutenant Apgar is going to stand up right on that table over there. You just line up, JP, facing me. There you go, perfect. Officer Rodas Flores. Officer Daniel Sandoval. Corporal Kennetta Brown. And Lieutenant Michael Parsley. Also recognized with this award, but not with us this evening, is our evidence specialist, Maria Achter, Officer Andrew Ordaz, who's currently serving his country in the United States Army on a National Guard assignment, Corporal Yamira Rodriguez, and Sergeant Charles Wooten. So without further ado, Mr. Mayor, if you would hand out the awards. This award is for those officers who went above and beyond the normal course of business and performed exemplary duties. And I'll tell you that a number of these officers were off duty the day this occurred and responded on short notice to the scene to assist with evidence processing and scene security and criminal investigation.
Officer Day, congratulations. Russ Flores, congratulations. Thank you. Sandoval, officer, congratulations. Thank you. Brown, thank you for your service. Paisley? I'll just read this out loud. The certificate says, in grateful recognition for your outstanding performance and dedication duty by assisting with the investigation, the evidence processing, and scene security at Shram Hills Park on April 19, 2024. Your actions and efforts are commendable, and we honor you with this certificate on the 12th day of August 2024. There you are.
Yep, we will. And then also civilian members of the organization that were there that assisted that day as well was the PEO, Ricardo Dennis. And he's doing PEO duties, but I'm going to have him come up real quick and if he is. Yeah, we can do that right now. Yeah, jump up there. No, I'm not. That's Ricardo's. I would. Yeah, we're gonna need two rows.
Two rows.
Hey, Daniel and Kenneth, take a step forward. And then sort of, there you go. Perfect.
I'm going to take a couple. Smile. There we go. Thank you for your service. Thank you.
The next group of awardees are awarded a Class 1 commendation. A Class 1 commendation is for those employees that display courage in the application of the laws and in arrests, which would otherwise not qualify for a Medal of Honor or a Silver Star, but whose actions nonetheless went above and beyond duty, the call of duty, and they're exemplary in their performance. And those officers are Officer Richard Millian, Master Police Officer Rahman, Master Police Officer Dylan Davis. Also receiving awards but not with us tonight are Officer Tyler Fahey, Officer Amy Sosa, and our Communications Supervisor Alicia Williams.
Should have waited until the end, done them all one time.
Thank you. One more. The last group that we'll recognize tonight are those officers that have been awarded a Silver Star. A Silver Star is the second highest award given to an officer of the City of Greenbelt Police Department. This award recognizes service of the department for the citizens of the city wherein valor, courage, and intelligence and bravery are shown and demonstrated over and above what is normally demanded of a police officer. Those officers are Officer Aiden Sims, Private First Class Michael Watkins, Corporal James Bound, Sergeant Irelis Fernandez, Captain Jermaine Gullidge, and Major Timothy White.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Come on, we're all neighbors, remember?
Thank you. So before I give up the microphone for the first time tonight, I would like to say thank you to the council and to our residents for allowing us to come and before you tonight and present this. Typically, we do awards presentations at the station on a squad level or at departmental functions, but I really felt that this was the kind of award and recognition that should be made public and that our residents get an opportunity to see the type of work and the type of officers that they employ. It's a testament to the city, to the city manager, to the HR, to the deputy chief who's done a lot of this hiring, to the quality of the individuals that we employ. And I'm grateful for everything that they do, big and small, every day. And I can't thank them enough for everything, including this event, and how they conduct themselves and their professionalism. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me to come and present this for you tonight. So thank you very much for having us.
No. Thank you, Chief, and you know, to each and every one of you, as well as your colleagues, you bring us such honor and just selflessness in a situation like this, stepping forward with regard to your own personal safety and just making a huge difference, a huge impact. So on the behalf of council and all of our residents, and from the young people that were there, from other jurisdictions, we greatly, greatly appreciate your service and your dedication. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any other council members care to make a comment?
I don't know that too much more needs to be said. We really appreciate all of your service. Thank you.
City manager? Okay, no, thank you. And you know, it really is great for the public. We don't see you all aggregated in a group like this very often, and we have so many new police officers and ones that have been with us and have received promotions. So it's an opportunity for the public to actually see you, and because there's so many things that go on where we don't really see what's going on behind the scenes. So just great appreciation for all you do. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. You know, it is so hard to see that video again and just see what happened and what could have happened. Having 700 young people at a senior skip day in our park. Of course, it was unsanctioned, it was spontaneous, but still being able to manage a crowd like that and protecting our residents and others is such a difficult thing. And our police department deals with situations like that almost every day, all too often, so we are so grateful for their service. At this time, item 7C is a legislative session recap and sort of a check-in with our legislative liaison or contractor, Daryl Carrington. We contracted with Mr. Carrington about 6 months ago to provide assistance and support in reaching out to our legislative bodies, including the state delegation as well as county council. So, Mr. Carrington, I'd like to welcome you here to the council chambers. It's a pleasure to see you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here. Also, congratulations to all of the awardees for their valor, for all their service, and to the chief, because obviously it's his leadership that makes that possible. So Greenbelt is very fortunate to have his leadership and the force that you have. So I know that I've flooded you all with lots of reports, and so I'm not going to regurgitate and just read the things I've already sent you. What I would like to do is hit some of the highlights from 2024, talk about what we might look at for 2025, and answer any questions that the mayor and council may have with respect to what we've been through and where I think we may be going. So very quickly, some of the major bills that we looked at statewide, we had HB 601, SB 442, which was street racing and exhibition driving prohibited acts, which is something that I know this community has been very concerned with for many years. And it took us about 4 or 5 sessions to actually get this bill passed in the posture that it's in. We'd like to thank Delegate Lehman and Senator Bidel for getting that done. We also worked very hard on getting the HB 282, which is the speed monitoring, which basically allows for civilians, non-sworn personnel, to be able to review the speed camera footage to determine that that's an actual violation. I've seen the process in motion, and it does not require a sworn person to actually do that. But there's a lot of back and forth between that particular committee and some of the vendors. I was very surprised that AAA was one of the folks that came out in opposition, because we believe that this would free up officers to be able to perform actual police duties versus sitting in front of a camera. Also, if you'll remember from the audits that they did in Baltimore City, one of the major overtime violations was using this particular function as saying I was actually doing this job when they actually weren't. So that could also ward that off. Just going through one of the bills I thought was really important for us, and we're going to keep an eye on it, was Delegate Ryan's bill, HB 924, which was the Regional Transportation Authority. Obviously, we're looking forward to having the FBI headquarters here in the not too distant future, and for that to come to pass, we have to build infrastructure. This was a model in which each region would have its own authority so that they can concentrate specifically on those roads that would be connected and the like around those facilities. That is something that is going to continue to have a conversation. I expect there to be some legislation that actually moves forward in the upcoming legislative year. Locally, we had a couple of bills that we were all interested in. One was the Parking Enforcement Authority, which is still a work in progress. So we expect that to come back in September when the council reconvenes. And the other was an omnibus bill, which basically was for rent stabilization, which we gave you a detailed report on. I think we were very fortunate to find out that GHI would be excluded from the provisions of this particular bill. And so this is really just continuing on and making permanent the rent stabilization bill that they did 2 years ago, which was a pilot. This is now permanent. There were a few amendments, which I detailed in my reports to you all. More than happy to go over any of those things in more detail later. In your 90-day report, there were some pictures and also an actual chart to show you the bills that we tracked and how their final postures worked out. We talked briefly about the rent stabilization, and I'm just looking at some of the impacts for the city of Greenbelt. Most of Greenbelt's rental housing predates 2000, making it subject to the new regulations. Given the city's historical nature and older housing stock, many properties will fall under the Jurisdictions Act. So I'm not quite sure if we have a registry here in the city for landlords. However, those folks should be aware of these changes and their responsibilities under them. At the end of the day, they're not allowed to cap or to exceed 6% is going to be the new cap. There's more details to it than that, but as I said, I'm not going to get into the weeds too much in this presentation. There are some dates I would like you all to be familiar with in the interim and leading into the next General Assembly session. First of all, for many of you, if you don't know, we're going to have the Maryland Association of Counties this week. It starts on the 14th and runs through Saturday the 17th. This year in particular, I've been attending these for about 20 years. This year in particular, when I looked at the attendee list, we have more delegates and senators than I've ever seen before. So this is going to be a very well-attended week. It could be because we're in an election year, a very important election year. We have a race for the U.S. Senate that we're looking at, as well as obviously the presidential election. So that could be one of the reasons. I do know that we're going to be a lot smarter at the end of this week than we are right now in terms of knowing what's going to happen next with respect to Annapolis and your statewide legislation. Let me see some of the other dates. The County Council will reconvene on September 3rd. October 1st is the customary date for the 2024 bills to be enacted. On October 20, there will be a report due to the Capital Debt Affordability Committee. And let me actually go back a little bit. I'm sorry. August 30th is an important date as well. August 30th is the deadline for all of the executive agencies to submit their FY 2026 budgets and any of their departmental legislation to the governor. So that's really, really critically important that we pay attention to what agencies are going to be allowed to say. Until the governor's office actually approves their budget and their legislative plans, they can't share them publicly, but we can certainly start asking certain secretaries and their staffs, is this going to be included? Is that going to be included? Or are you guys thinking about this or that? And so I'm saying all that because you'll want to think as well as a body as the things that you would like to request, maybe budget items and the like for the next year, so that we're talking to our senator and delegates and making sure that when they're talking to appropriations or B&T, these are the priority items that they are saying that they would like to move forward. Continuing, we have on November 1st is a statutory deadline for members of the General Assembly to request a drafting of pre-bills. So the pre-filed bills are bills that will be available on day one to go into the hopper. The 20th of November is the statutory deadline for those bills to be approved by the members. We also have the council will be going back into recess in early December, and that's also when we have what's called the passing of the gavel. If the council chooses to choose new leadership, then that's when they would actually have a vote for a new chair and vice chair of the council. They could also choose to elect the same members as they have done in the past. So we don't know where that's going to be at this point, but I just want to make sure you're aware of that. We have the, and on December 30th, there should be a compilation of all of the legislative committee reports on the interim activities that has to be submitted to the Legislative Policy Committee for General Assembly. And then on January 8th is the first day of the new legislative session, and that evening, MML will have their annual evening reception for all of their members. And so hopefully you will all plan to attend on January 8th. And there are several receptions during the course of the day, but certainly the MML reception that evening is very important. Outside of that, I think we've hit the highlights. 90 days, stabilization and sign monitoring. So yes, I think I hit the highlights. I'd like to give you all the opportunity to ask questions and make sure that I'm answering the things that you need in forecasting ahead. I'm sorry, I did leave one thing out. In forecasting ahead for next year, one of the things that we do know for certain is that we have a structural budget deficit, and we have a huge education program, the Blueprint, that's being implemented. So we do anticipate there will be some fee increases next year. There may be just right-out tax increases. They may not even put cosmetic terms on that. I anticipate that anything that has a fiscal note will be challenging for the General Assembly to wrap its mind around, simply because, as I said, we have a structural deficit, which means we don't have enough money versus what we were saying we're supposed to outlay. So we're going to have to bring that into balance. So I would make my requests modest. I would make them around more policy-centered things that that doesn't actually cost dollars and cents, but are meaningful to your residents. And I would try to kind of concentrate on those things for victories, because it's going to be hard to get things that have big ticket items on it. I mean, as it is, we are going to have to expend funds for the infrastructure, for the FBI. So that's something that they know about. We also I think I shared with Josue and Tim the money that's been committed by the federal government, and then also the money that was committed by the state. And the figures are just out of my head right now, but I believe it's $844 million at the Fed, and there's about $200 million here at the state level that's already been appropriated and encumbered for those reasons. I know that you may have heard in the news a couple of months ago about a $3 trillion appropriation being tabled. That is just political theater at the moment. After the election is over and we get to around probably November, December, we'll see that those monies are going to get back onto the table because only the federal government can fund this particular process. So that $3.2 trillion will get put back in.
Thank you so much for that high-level overview. I have a couple of just quick comments, and I know council may have some questions. You talked about the civilian review of automated tickets. That's one of Maryland Municipal League's legislative priorities. I am sitting on that committee this year. And you mentioned Delegate Spiegel's Regional Transportation Authority. You didn't say anything about Planning and Zoning Authority, and I know that's a priority for Bowie, College Park, Greenbelt, and for a number of municipalities. And Delegate Holmes put in a bill last year. I was speaking with.
I was just hoping you didn't notice, Mr. Mayor.
So he says he intends to put that in again. That's sort of
yes.
stalled out in the House.
Only Delegate Holmes was brave enough to bring the bill forward this past year, and I'll be very candid. I don't think that bill has a very good chance. I think Councilman Franklin was trying to come up with some amendments to try to make it a little bit more palatable to the rest of his colleagues, but I don't sense that there's an appetite on the council to give this authority to some of our larger municipalities. And that's just, we've had this bill come up like maybe every 3 or 4 years. This concept comes up again. It's just a matter of, I just don't think that the council has the appetite, and at the state level, they're not going to move a local bill without the support of the local delegation. And, that's to be, understood. So I don't think that there's support for it at either the state delegation nor at the local level, and that's part of the problem with trying to get this moved forward.
Well, maybe with new leadership in the county or new at-large leadership, and if there was a strong state senator who was backing it, that might help. Council, do you have questions or thoughts or concerns you want to share? Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about the property tax credit for public school employees, because it noted that it passed, but one of the things that we had brought up when we were talking about it and that we included in our letter, I think it was only for eligible employees that didn't live in the county previously, if I remember the language correctly, and that was one that we had thought was kind of odd to not, that if somebody already lived here, they wouldn't be eligible for, like if they were renting, they couldn't buy. Were there any amendments to that one before it passed?
Councilwoman, I don't have that in my head, but I can get you that answer.
Okay. And just one sort of more minor note, but it looks like the table that was in there doesn't look like it was fully updated for the end of the session, because it still looks like some of the things are, referencing hearings and dates and things. So I don't know if there is one that is sort of a similar table that is, right at actually the final status. The table format is fairly useful. So if there would be a more updated one, rather, I know there's the listing, and then just one comment. I would suggest choosing different colors for that, because that those colors like the orange or yellow on white background is generally not accessible from a accessibility of low visibility standpoint. There are color contrast checkers you can get online, but that's just
absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
No, I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, so just different colors would be helpful.
And let me address the question you had about the dates just like freezing at certain points. So I think we should have had, I should have maybe done a better job of explaining what the chart does and what it's actually representing. So let's say, for example, a bill has a hearing and then it goes into a drawer. The last disposition you're going to have on that particular bill is whatever the date of the hearing is.
Okay.
So what happens for most of the bills that we have in Annapolis, they will die. I mean, most bills die. I mean, we do somewhere around 3,000 bills on average. We pass 180, 210 or so. So, you can do the math. So most bills will not have a completion. Only those bills that get enacted will actually have a completion date attached to them. So that's why you see where some bills just seem like, why did it just stop here on, February 22nd and there was no more activity? Well, that's because they had the hearing. There was no further subcommittee work. That bill just basically sat in the drawer until sine die. I just want to make sure, does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it just seems like an extra notation of.
Just that explanation would have been helpful too.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that would be, yeah. Thank you.
And you have to understand also, I have to understand also that not everybody knows all the same legislative lingo and is used to looking at the same legislative charts. Some of us have been looking at these things for 20 years, so it's not the same thing as when, you were just elected to council or only been here for a couple of years. And I understand that, and I said that this is a work in progress, so I need your feedback so I can make your reports more meaningful. And my goal is for you to be able to read them and not have, be like, oh, I know exactly where I'm at and what's going on. And that's ultimately our goal in servicing our clients, to make sure you are up to speed, understand, maybe not all the nuances and in the weeds on everything, because like I said, most of these bills aren't going to even survive. So I don't want you spending 20, 30 hours over the course of a session on a bill that I know when it was introduced wasn't going anywhere. So I will also give you I'll give you my estimation of what I think is going to move and not move. And sometimes, frankly, it's based upon sponsor or the topic area, or as I said before, if something has a huge fiscal note, it does not have a very good chance of moving this session. But thank you so much for that feedback. And if you have any color suggestions, I am very easy.
I can send you. There are color contrast checkers. You can make sure that they meet the accessibility guidelines for having enough color contrast for low vision readers. But generally, light orange and yellow on a white background, not a good idea.
Thank you for that.
Okay, other questions? Now, you'll be joining us you'll be briefing us on some legislation regarding stop sign cameras in a few minutes. So we'll be getting to that. But are there other questions or concerns from council? Hearing none, we want to make sure that the communication lines are good between you and council. And I know one of the areas of highlighting is just the relationship with county council. And just with the rent stabilization bill, is that coming up this week, or it's coming up? It was in committee.
It's
gone
already
to the
passed
body
out.
as Hill.
It passed out of committee.
Passed out, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's coming up for final approval in this week or in
To
September?
the best of my understanding, this is already passed out.
It's already passed out.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
but the final consideration by the body as a whole, when
Yes.
is that going to happen?
It's passed already. This bill has actually been enacted.
Okay.
So we're talking about legislation that has been enacted. And so when we were talking earlier about some of the amendments that were done, so removing GHIs, the co-op doesn't have to worry about, it doesn't apply to them. So they exempted the co-ops. Councilwoman Ivy gave me a briefing on the amendments, and I gave a report in detail to our city manager and deputy managers to make sure that they understood all the parameters when it passed.
Right. Okay, just want to put a pin in that and emphasize council, needs to have a good sense of when things are moving out of committee, when they're going to be considered by the body as a whole, the county council, so that we can weigh in if that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just echo that, we need to have these bills brought to our attention, especially something like rent stabilization. We have more than 5,000 rental units in the city. Many of our residents are renters. So we need to be told in advance in case we would like to testify or write a letter or give comment. And the same for the zoning omnibus bill. That was actually brought to our attention by residents. And we sort of had to play catch up and figure out, wait, what is this bill? And do we want to say something. We ended up being able to, I believe we wrote a letter and Miss Ruby testified, I think.
She did.
Yeah, but we need to know those things in advance so we don't feel like we're scrambling, so we don't feel like we're caught unawares, so that when our constituents are asking us questions, we're able to answer them. Because we don't have time to track all the bills.
And that's why we have you.
Right.
Correct.
And I see Councilmember McKinney has a question online.
Yeah, I just wanted, again, to echo some of the things that Mayor Pro Tem and all the council members have said so far. But I would also ask, and maybe we're going to talk about this in our upcoming work session with you, but I think some of the things that you've even raised in your summary today, where you were going through like the timeline of the important dates and bills, like it would be good to have that outlined ahead of time so that we can know when we need to weigh in advance, so we're not kind of caught off guard. So if we can work through what that would look like, so that the document that you're providing, even in this report right here, is less of just a report out and is more of a kind of living, breathing document with specific timelines around that, and timelines attached to each of these bills, that would be helpful.
Thank you very much for that, for those comments. And that's something I'm hopeful that we're getting toward, is having really a fixed year-round calendar in which we know exactly what we're doing at whichever stage of the year. So just to emphasize, I look at this thing as being a continuum. So sine die is the last day of the legislative session, but it's also, I think that's the first day of the new session. Because the very next day, we're licking our wounds over everything that just happened, and with optimism and great hope for what might lie ahead for the next year. And so think about this. So April, for the last couple of weeks of April, everyone goes home, goes on vacation, catches their breath. First week of May, you start having spring conferences in Ocean City for all kinds of groups. MML will have their conference in the second or third week of June every year. And then MACO has their conference the second or third week of August every year. That really sets the calendar. So we're talking in April, and we're talking in May, June, July, and August. By the end of August, that's why everyone has to submit their departmental budgets and their legislative goals, because we've been talking about all those things for the past 6 months. And so you take September's back to school. October and November is when folks are writing their pre-file bills, getting those things in, the stuff that the things that we know that we want. And I'm trying to wrap up very quickly, Mr. Mayor. And then you go into December holiday, and then January starts all over again, hair on fire for 90 days. And then sine die starts all over again. I like us to get on that rotation, on that calendar, and I'll work very closely with Husway and Tim to make sure that happens.
And we are moving forward, moving our legislative agenda process forward quite a bit. So we'll actually be talking about legislative priorities a bit on Wednesday. Appreciate your service. Looking forward to hearing for your brief update later on in the agenda.
Great. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, well, thank you. At this time, let's go ahead and move to item number 9, administrative reports. Mr. Samarone, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Mr. Mayor? Doing even better after having dealt with the storm that passed through here last week. We weathered the storm with little impact to the city. So all of our preparation paid off, and then the storm took a slight detour, not affecting us as much as we expected. I shared the details of our storm preparation guidelines with council. If you have any feedback, please let me know. Moving on to other events, we've had a very successful events on the National Night Out. Thank you all for joining. I got a chance to see some of you at some of the events. So outstanding events, great, 5 events in total with a great turnout. On PEPCO, we are near finalizing the billing discrepancies and the streetlights inventory. We are down to 7 unknown streetlights that we need to identify the wattage, so required some staff to get up on close to the lamps to identify or measure the wattage. So we're close to that, closing out that project, or at least the billing component of it. Good news on the summer activities. We concluded our coding class at the Spring Hill Lake Recreation. That was on July 30th. we had regular attendance between 10 and 16 middle schoolers attending those classes. So good turnout for our pilot program with coding and AI for middle schoolers at Spring Hill Lake Recreation. Other news, good news on CARES, we have filled the clinical supervisor position. Aurelia Lesh has started. So we are back to having a clinical supervisor in the CARES division. On the fire and EMS services, we continue that issue, working on that issue on two fronts. One is the administrative front and the other is the legal side. Our legal counsel has filed an amended complaint and has filed an opposition to the county's motion to dismiss the case. So that was filed today. We will move towards the discovery phase and scheduling hearing on that case.
Thank you very much, and especially thank you for that very brief update on the fire and EMS situation. I just want to assure and let the public know that a huge amount of work is going on behind the scenes to try and make sure that Engine Company 35 is staffed and that we have adequate protection. You know, it's really all about our residents and making sure that there's public safety, a reasonable response time. So I've seen some things on social media. We've been trying to set up a public meeting with the fire chief, and we've asked a number of times. And unfortunately, she's on travel and can't quite make the public meeting, which is not a big surprise. But I just really want to assure people that we are doing everything that we can possibly can, including continuing on with the legal measures in collaborating with Berwyn Heights and College Park to take this as far as we possibly can. We want the raw data. We want to be able to see the numbers. We want to have good communication with this and any other topic with Prince George's County. If there's a major change that's being proposed, we need to know about it 6 months, a year ahead of time. And this 30 days notice is just inadequate. So any comments or questions from council?
I just want to comment that we still have not received the raw data. The last time we last for it was 2 weeks ago, Mayor, was about that?
That's
and we
correct.
still haven't received the report that actually determined how they were going to reallocate staffing, which we've asked for multiple times. And I just say that so that folks know that we still don't have them. If you're wondering why we're not talking about them, we still have not received those.
It seems like information is beginning to trickle out, mostly because of the strong legal actions that we've taken. So we will be poring over whatever comes out and working with our legal counsel and working with our sister municipalities to do what we can. The volunteer firefighters, such an important part of our community, such an important part of the public safety community. So, it's the career firefighters do a great job, but this question about data and transparency and talking about things ahead of time is very, very important. It's no small thing at all. So we continue to fight. Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, that's going to take us to legislation. And that would be item number 11, which is a resolution to authorize the negotiated purchase of certain goods and services from various vendors as enumerated herein when the total fiscal year purchase from each vendor exceeds $10,000. This is an item for first reading. The way that we manage things in Greenbelt, if there's a purchase for $10,000 or more, either a single purchase or a number of purchases over the course of the year, council reviews that to make sure that the contracts, going out equitably. So in reference, we're actually talking about 3 lists. We have one list that's sorted by the amount, another list is sorted from high to low, and the third list is negotiated alphabetically. So each year, the city does business with a number of vendors whom the city's individual purchases or aggregate are $10,000 or more. So council's had a chance to look at the list. So Obtaining bid proposals on these goods and services is not warranted because some of these vendors are the sole source or best source for the purchase. In other instances, the city's purchases are based on bids that are piggybacked or taken by other governmental agencies, like the state of Maryland, Prince George's County, or the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So, there are cooperative purchasing programs that we're able to take advantage of, and we're able to accept that bid without the time and expense of going out and starting the process from scratch. So our treasurer, Bertha Gaiman, is here with us. Bertha, how are you tonight?
Quite well, Mayor and Council. Good evening, not afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening.
So the only thing I would add is that we have included all new vendors that we think we will use in 2025, really looking at the list from last year, adding those names. So as you mentioned, this is something that we bring forward every year so that you will know, the council will know exactly the vendors that we plan to use or possibly could use in the services that the city needs. So we're certainly asking that you would approve the resolution to include the new vendor, for all of them actually, but identifying the new member.
Okay, and this is a resolution for first reading, so this
First
would
reading,
actually
that's
come
true,
back at the next council meeting.
That's correct. Sorry
So,
about that.
practice is not to really get into a detailed discussion for
Okay.
first reading, but
Okay.
so council and the public, please take a look at this list, and if you have any questions, we can talk about them next time.
Thank you.
And I'd like to make a motion that we special order number.
We actually need to make the motion and move it for first reading, don't we?
Actually, we don't. We do?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Make a motion, please.
I move for first reading, a resolution to authorize the negotiated purchase of certain goods and services from various vendors as enumerated herein when total fiscal year purchases from each vendor exceed $10,000.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. That'll come up at the September meeting. We need a roll call?
For first
For
reading?
first reading? I don't think we do. We don't really even need a second. We don't need a vote. Yeah, I know. That's
think it
why. That's why I didn't. Just needs to be read.
needs to be introduced
Okay,
as a
let's
motion, but
keep
yeah.
moving. So I would like to, at this time, I'd like to special order item number 17 to the next order of business, so that Ms. Gaiman can report out on the online bill pay capacities. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that measure carries. Well, Ms. Gaiman, how are you?
Quite well, thank you.
Nice to see you. Hey, so this item number 17, approval of online bill pay proposal to cover fees for the first year of the program. As the final phase of implementation of the new Edmunds Financial Management accounting system, staff is now ready to launch the online bill pay feature. This feature allows Greenbelt residents to access, schedule, and securely pay their bills online. Currently, the city covers the cost of the limited credit card transactions, which is 2-3%, I believe. Staff is looking to launch this online bill pay program and expand users. The cost of the city will increase significantly. Staff is asking council to confirm its desire for the city to continue covering the fee amounts associated with various payment options. So, Ms. Gaiman, what would the percentage, the fees? Is it 2%, 3%?
Yes, they're listed on this sheet, and there is a e-check. If you pay by e-check, there's a 95-cent fee if it's agency funded, meaning that the city continues to cover it, and if it's resident funded, it's $1.95.
What is your estimate of the total cost for the city to cover
I'm
that?
estimating about $50,000. It could go up to $50,000, and I am proposing that we cover those fees if that occurs. We have $13,000 in the finance department's budget for 2025, and then I spoke with Mr. George, and he agreed that we could possibly cover the balance with ARPA funds for this first year trial period.
So, and when you say first year, we're talking about the fiscal year, so this would be up until June 30th, 2025?
Correct. This fiscal year 25 years, so it would be from July 1 through June 30th of next year, yes.
Okay, and after that, the individual payee would cover the expenses themselves. Is that correct, Mr. George?
Well, we wanted this test period just to see how much it could possibly be. And the reason, again, we are asking that the city continues to fund is because the city currently funds the fees associated with credit card payments. That's happening throughout the city with other departments as well. So I think based on the dollar amount of actual costs, if it's reasonable, I probably would come back and ask that it remain in the city's budget and then budget for it in the next year's budget, 2026.
Understood. And just to kind of frame the issue, so this financial management accounting package, the Edmunds package, is something that council has approved and you've been working to implement over the past year.
Yes, year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yes.
So just looking at going live with the online billing, when would you expect, depending on council, well, I guess the questions are not necessarily related, but when would this go live?
Well,
October?
it can go. It is live right now.
It's live right now?
It's live right now. However, we have not launched this piece of it, and so residents cannot sign up until we get a decision is made. And so once a decision is made, then I will be in contact with the vendor to say it's either going to be agency funded or resident funded. It will take probably 2 weeks to get the paperwork ready for it to go live, completely live, and then residents can start signing up. And I have to say, Mayor, I just want to share with everyone that I can't tell you the number of calls that I've received since I mentioned this several months ago. When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? So it would be great to just continue to offer it now and see what happens within this year.
Right, and the goal, they'll have to sign up.
Yes, you will have to sign up.
The goal would be people would be able to start paying their bills perhaps October 1st, if not sooner.
I would say mid-September, yes.
Okay, questions from council. Mr. Roberts, please.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So the $50,000 cost of paying for the credit card fees or whatever it is that spread out in all the departments, recreation and so forth?
No, that would just be for this new program under finance. Each department has their own line item for making those payments, like recreation. They accept credit card payments for all of the activities that happen there. So no, this would be just.
So what happens with the fees for that? We're paying for that now, or what?
Yes, sir, we are.
So we're paying the fees for all the credit cards.
All the credit card transactions right now, yes, through all departments.
I'm kind of I don't know. I think maybe it's not appropriate to have the taxpayers subsidize, that program. Because I think, if you look at the private sector, they put every dime of cost onto the consumer. I mean, I'm not saying we should have a hard, but, depending on what the programs are, maybe people can afford to pay the extra dollar. And the city doesn't have to pay it. So, we just talked the other day about, looking at the community center to see how the budget can be changed or worked out to I assume, lessen the amount of subsidy to the taxpayer. Because already there's a huge subsidy from from the indoor pool as well as some other programs. So. But, that's just, and that's what, people voted for when they said we want an indoor pool. That's what they voted for.
Yes.
We knew that the building was never going to pay for itself. We were always going to have to put something into it. But on this, I'm not so sure that we need to eat that amount anyway.
Well, let me say the $50,000 that I'm recommending that you authorize is an estimate. I really don't know what it's going to be. It's going to depend on the number of people who actually use the system, actually pay by credit card or pay by e-check. There's really no way to know how many people will sign up. But as I said, I have received a number of calls.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
residents
we're way
asking-
overdue for having people be able to
Sure.
pay for their services online or whatever
Sure.
they want to do on the phone or wherever it is. I assume with this program that they'll be able to do it on the phone or online or all the above. Or
It's online. I'm not real sure about over the phone, but for sure online. Because
okay.
you have to set up an account and you can have
Okay.
the, yes, it can be automatic payments or whenever they go in and actually make the payment. So I think it's online.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have like a rough estimate of how much gross revenue would be coming in from the online payments? Let's say, I don't know, 60%, 50% of the people that make payments did them online. What would that number be?
I don't, Mayor, and actually that's that's been the reason I haven't brought it forth any sooner than I have, because I was trying to get that kind of information either from our Edmonds vendor and our bank. So it's really about, I really don't think there's any revenue to be had. I think it's a cost that we pay the credit card company. It's the cost that we pay for the e-check. But I don't believe that there's a revenue generator in this program.
No, I just meant like overall, how much do you expect to come in from online payments, just the payments? And I imagine it's just going to take a little while to kind of get to that.
Yeah,
but it's just a guess, because that would help. That would put the $50,000 in context a little bit better.
Right.
I think Councilmember McKinney had her hand up first, and then Councilmember Niesel, and then Councilmember Pompey. And if anybody
thank
wants
you.
to make a motion, as we discuss, please feel free. Go ahead, Councilmember McKinney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the more people utilize this system, the more the potential cost may be in the long term for the city to pay for those fees. Is that a correct understanding?
That is correct.
Okay. And then my second question is there, it seems like there's just 2 models in here, basically funding models. One is agency and one is resident. Is there any kind of hybrid model which could potentially lower the cost to the city, but also not make the cost as high as what you have in here for a resident?
I can certainly pose that question to the company to see if that's possible. That's not something that has been offered at this time. But I do want to highlight the fact that there would be a reduction in cost to the city, because we would not be the mailing out those bills. This program will allow us to send invoices, bills by email, and folks can pay online. So there should be some cost reduction there. There's certainly cost reduction in ink and paper and things of that nature. And so I do anticipate some cost reductions to the city should this move forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Niesel.
Hi. I really, really appreciate that you want to make this as cheap as possible for our residents. I think that is incredibly kind of you. But knowing that this would never go away, this cost is going to continue. One of the smartest people I know once told me, you never want to give something to people that you might have to take away.
I agree.
So I'm really, really hesitant to say that we would cover the costs of this, especially when, 1, there's such a strong appetite for online bill pay, as has been evidenced by the calls to you. And 2, consumers have a really, really normal relationship with online bill pay fees.
Sure.
The one thing that I would say is very important to me is to make sure that there is still a free way for people to pay. And so if that is, the way they currently do by check to Public Works, is that?
They come to our office.
Okay.
They walk to our office.
If that option remains free, and that is still something that your office is willing to take on, then I would be in favor of the resident funding of any online bill pay. If for any reason that check delivery option were to go away, I would want to make sure that there was a free option for residents.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect?
May I add some context? So I agree with you. It's difficult to take something once you've made it free. The challenge we're facing with the decision is that it's already free. It's just free to select people. So there are folks paying with credit card now, whether they are employee bills, solid waste bills. It's just a very small percentage. So as we launch a full-on online program, we're facing the question of, council, do you want to start charging these now because the cost is going to significantly increase? We've got this group that will be losing it. So we thought, okay, we have the ARPA money, we could roll it out, see if we have critical mass to have users of it. We need to do some revenue recovery analysis and adjustments. Solid waste is one of them. We haven't raised solid waste fees in years. So we know we need to adjust that rate. As when we come back to council and adjust the rate, we could look at what does a rate structure look like that incorporates administrative costs into that structure. And that's where we can roll in a hybrid cost to recover some of these fees, or we set it aside as a separate charge for those that want to pay the 3% because they want to use their Amex card.
Well, to my eyes, I think that charging that small group that's already had the benefit of online bill pay when everyone else has had to walk it down to the office, that's fine. I would rather do that than get everyone used to having this covered. And then I've completely forgot my other point.
So are you interested in making a motion to that effect?
I would like to hear what Ms. Gaiman has to say.
I guess I'd like to just reiterate that we're requesting that this be a one-year test period. Again, since we have the ARPA dollars to supplement the majority, if it was to go to $50,000, and I'm just not sure that it would, but if it went to $50,000, then the amount that the city would pay would remain $13,000 that's already in the 2025 budget. Any overage from that amount would be absorbed with ARPA funds for this 1 year. And I guess we could also introduce it to the residents as that this is a test period and that it may not continue to be a agency funded situation. But, and I agree with you, it's hard to take it back, but if we introduce it as such, then the expectation should be that it could go from agency to resident funded.
You expect that to be the expectation. It doesn't matter. I mean, the languaging is, people are going to hear what they want to hear always, and they're going to hear free. I remembered my point, though. I see it as beneficial to introduce this now because we are going to have to probably reduce costs later. And it could be seen as like a double hit if we are imposing credit card fees and increasing costs for services. And I'm going to let Jenny ask her question before I make any motion because I do like to hear what everyone has to say.
No, my point was just similar to Amy's. I'm really not a fan of the taxpayers, and as Mr. Roberts said, subsidizing these types of fees. I think user fees are they work exactly as they're intended to work. You use something, you pay a fee for it. And I mean, if somebody wants to use their credit card, they will pay the fee. And I agree, like I think people should still be able to pay by check, if like as we do now. Walking it down, putting it in the box, or mailing it in the mail. But I really think, if we are introducing it, we need to introduce it as a fee-based service because there is a cost to us. We are responsible for, managing the budget of the city. We are already in a, budget-constrained environment, and the idea of adding another possibly $50,000 just makes me cringe inwardly, particularly when I think that people who actually want this will be more than happy to pay for it. I mean, I want it. I'm happy to pay for it.
Did you want to make a motion? No?
I mean, a motion
to not allocate the ARPA funding and the $14,000 that's currently in the treasurer's budget. My fear is these fees, 3%, that's kind of high. And I know with ATMs and whatnot, I really do have issues sometimes with the size of the fees. But this is a convenience, and if someone wants to send a check, they can still do that for free. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess another sort of hybrid option, I think, sort of as Ms. McKinney was asking about, is the fee for the e-check or the bank transfer seems like a much smaller amount because it doesn't have the percent on the credit card fee. You note 3, a debit card or credit card. Does the fee apply to a debit card as well as a credit card?
It does not, no.
It does not. So I guess it seems to me that there might be sort of a middle ground option if there's a way to implement it, which is to cover the fee if it's a direct bank transfer or an e-check or a debit card. But if people want to use their credit card, then we don't cover the fee. Because that is the much higher fee. And that seems like that could be a balance point where we're providing some subsidy for people if they're coming directly from their bank account. But if you want the convenience of using your credit card and getting your rewards by paying your bills with your credit card, whatever rewards you get, your airline miles or whatever, maybe that's somewhere that comes. Does that reach a balancing point that feels better or no?
Just like to get a motion on the floor and vote on it. This is actually a resolution for first reading, is it not?
I think this is just for approval tonight. So it's not. This is this is our opportunity to discuss it.
Well, let's.
Do you think that would be feasible, Ms. Gaiman?
I hesitate because I'm just not sure if the admin system can handle that.
Okay.
The way they actually presented it to us, it's either agency funded or resident funded. They did not offer a sort of a hybrid situation. I'm certainly willing to go back to ask them if they have that.
Why don't we go ahead and do that? If you have questions that are not answered and cannot be answered tonight, why don't we move this to the agenda in September?
Well, you wanted to get started with bill pay in September.
Or if I may speak.
No, please go ahead.
We could certainly launch it as resident funded and let it be resident funded for the year. And if we can somehow absorb some of the costs to help residents out next year, we can do that as well. But it would be really great to get this going if we could possibly do so.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the program, but that it is funded by the residents. Is there a second?
That.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Anybody online? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. But several really important questions have come up. So if you can kind of get back to us in September through the city manager or directly, we would appreciate that. Thank you
We'll
so
certainly
much.
do so. Thank you so much.
Okay. So we've got 2 items. We also have Mr. Carrington, who says that his report would be brief. So I'd like to move to special order this item from Mr. Carrington, the briefing on the stop sign cameras, to special order to where we are right now, which would be item number 12. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Mr. Carrington, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's great to be back.
Okay, I'll just read this presentation regarding stop sign monitoring systems and enabling legislation. This is in regard to House Bill 364, and it's a legislative measure that permits the use of stop sign monitoring systems or cameras on state and local highways situated in school zones in Prince George's County. So Councilmember Pompey had asked to have this placed on the agenda. This initiative aims to enhance compliance with stop sign laws and improve safety for pedestrians, school children. So please.
Thank you for that introduction, Mr. Mayor. So that is the bill in its full form. So HB 364 was just passed this session by the General Assembly. It does require the county council to present enabling legislation for our municipalities to be able to implement their own systems. I've spoken with both Councilwoman Watson and Council Chair Ivy. This is going to be introduced in September when the council reconvenes. Obviously, the council ends by the first week of December, so it'll be getting done in October, November. It has not been written yet, so we don't have the language, but I will make sure that that is something that we stay on top of. And if you'd like to weigh in on that particular bill, we'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
No, I appreciate the update. Generally speaking, the city of Greenbelt, we favor enabling legislation, anything that allows us to exercise our discretion. So the discussion about exactly if this were to move forward, depending on the language, we would have a lively debate and discussion from our residents and others. Ms. Pompey, council member, would you like to comment on this?
I mean, sure. I just, I've been keeping an eye on this legislation. I've been waiting for it. We would have to have our own bill, obviously, to implement this here in Greenbelt. I do have some questions about school zones and where they would be and how many we could have, how we would fund those, if the county would be offering any funds for that. But I do think that, if you live in Greenbelt, you have seen that there is many times the stop sign compliance is not great, and even in school zones, even when there are kids on the road and walking down the street. So I hope that this would be helpful. I know this legislation has been enacted in other places in the country, and it has been helpful. And I know that this was partially enacted due to the 2 children who were killed in Riverdale Park when somebody went through a stop sign there. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to us having our own legislation here, and we can move forward with our own legislation even before the enabling legislation from the county, so that we are ready to implement it. It's a shame that it's not going to be able to be implemented, I think, before the school year starts. But yeah, that's.
Well,
And
I would
thank you,
support,
Council.
Yeah, sending a letter of support for the county. I mean, we can easily do that and circle back and have a discussion about how we might implement it. But just as far as supporting the concept, I'm open to that. Did you want to make a motion to write a letter of support?
I move that we write a letter of support to the county council in regards to enabling legislation for HB 364 stop sign monitoring.
I'll second that. Yeah, council member.
Yeah,
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted to, and maybe this isn't known yet, but in terms of the would it be the same school zones as speed cameras are allowed? Is that the idea?
That is correct, but not with the ability to do them outside of school zones as we have now with the new legislation around speed cameras. So this is
Right.
going to be strictly to the original school zones as you know them,
And it
as you currently know them.
and it specifies state and local highways.
That is correct.
So is that based on like their designation as who owns the road, or is that based on speed?
No, that's based on who owns the road, who has the jurisdiction on that
Okay.
particular road. So as you know, state highway, we always run into issues whenever we're trying to do things on their road. So this gives you the ability to be able to put these systems on. Doesn't matter if it's state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. All in favor of the motion to write a letter of support for this legislation? We can maybe hold it until we have the language, but I think the intent.
That was one of the things I was going to offer, Mr. Mayor, is that you may want to actually at least get the draft of the introduction of what the bill is going to look like for the enabling legislation, and then you can do your legislation off of that or write your letters off of that, and so you actually know what you're saying. I don't think it's going to be generally dissimilar to what the legislation is and what they ask the counties to do. So I don't think you're really jumping the gun by starting to draft what it is that you want to see for your program.
So if this would be a friendly amendment, maybe we can just authorize the the administration to draft a letter of support that we can send based on the language. We just draft it and have it ready to go. Would you consider that a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay, I'm good with that. Mr. Roberts?
Is there any kind of estimate of how many cameras we would have in the city?
Well, that's going to be based.
Under whatever criteria they have so far?
That's one of the technical things, Mr. Roberts. Great question. So that's going to be up to the county. I don't know if they're going to restrict you to say only one camera per school zone in your, your particular jurisdiction, or they may let you have them, you can't have more than one every 500 feet. There's going to have to be something reasonable put in as well.
I'm really uncomfortable voting on something that I have no idea what it is. That's a problem. I mean, the concept is good, but I think we should wait to send a letter until we actually know what the bill says and how it will affect us, so on and so forth. How much will it cost us to put all these devices in and so forth?
Well,
so I think we are jumping the gun.
This is enabling legislation, so we don't have to necessarily go through. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the delegate who was instrumental in moving this forward was a delegate from District 22, and I believe it was Ann Healy who was one of our delegates, so we can certainly communicate with her. But just as a general principle, since she's trying to move this forward as enabling legislation, I would be supportive of her intention. So if there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and just take a vote on it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Carrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
And that's going to bring us to item number, actually 7B. Back. And this would be item number 7B, license plate reading camera project update. On July the 8th, the City Council approved a contract for the purchase of license plate reading cameras. The council requested additional information, including a police department general order and a map providing location details. Chief Bowers, thank you so much for your patience, your perseverance. We do have a couple of items and there may be a lively discussion, but let's go ahead and get the update and take a look at the map. Hopefully we'll be able to put the map up on the screen.
Yes, sir. So I'll try to paraphrase. I provided you all with a memo earlier prior to the meeting. It's in your packet. It talks about kind of where we are. Some of the big things that I recall coming from the original council meeting had to do with locations and sort of the policy and what that was going to look like in terms of how locations were selected and what the data retention would look like. I provided you with a copy of the draft policy. We'll have a meeting with PSAC the 1st of September. That'll be on their agenda. So we'll have an opportunity to discuss then with PSAC if they have any concerns over that item. At this point, I've sent it off to the city attorney, and he's had no concerns sent back to me at this point. So we're really pretty comfortable with the policy in terms of where it is, trying to utilize best practices from other agencies. The map that's provided to you shows approximate locations. Some of these may vary.
Cut off a little. I don't see Greenbelt East on there. Where's
it's
cut
sort
off.
of cut off the other end of your map. It doesn't look like it showed up. I apologize. I think when I moved the document over, it kind of
cut off the edge.
Cut off the end there. I
southern
apologize
part.
for that.
Down to Good Luck Road.
Yep. So you can see at the bottom there's a description of each location. So these are approximate locations where they will wind up given infrastructure. It may shift a few degrees in some direction in terms of where that final structure will be. In a couple of these locations, particularly 5, 6, 7, and 8, we plan to use Pepco poles to mount the cameras to, so we can kind of lower some of our infrastructure costs. So we're still going through the process with Pepco to get the authorization to do that. Where we are, I've had multiple meetings with our vendor. We'll have a pre-construction meeting for the first 3 sites in September, and those first 3 are Greenbelt Station Parkway, Breezewood Drive at Cherrywood, and Breezewood Drive at Edmonton. Those will go. We'll have to mount poles at 2 of those locations, and 1 location will go on existing infrastructure. So those are the first 3 sites that we'll begin working on. As we get authority from Pepco, we'll begin working on some of the other sites. And again, not showing your map, I apologize. It got cut off, and I didn't do a good job of checking it before I submitted it. Hanover, Parkway at Mandan, and then Mandan at Hanover. So the kind of the 3 corners there of Hanover, Mandan, and Greenbelt Road will all have locations as well.
Yeah, and the third Hanover Parkway license plate reader, that would be down by Good Luck Road.
No, you would have Hanover and Greenbelt Road, and then Hanover Mandan, and then Mandan and Greenbelt Road.
Okay. Yeah, and we've already authorized the purchase of these readers.
Yes, sir.
But because there were a number of questions about location and really about policy, we wanted a little bit more information.
Yes, sir.
Really seems like there should be one at the foot of Hanover Road at Good Luck Road, because that's a major place people could come in there and turn left on Hanover Parkway, and they would be missed by these license plate readers.
So that is a possible location as we move forward, and we can kind of figure out best locations and best service areas and existing infrastructure. One of the reasons that we're using Pepco poles is because it can lower our cost, which will give us a little more flexibility in terms of placing an extra unit at a different location like that.
Yeah, I would really advocate for one of the readers there. So, and they're fixed. They're not movable, but they're not that hard. Once they're installed on a pole, or if we don't build the pole, if they're installed, they can be moved.
Relocated. So it is a cameras in a power source are mounted to a pole. Particularly, I mean, they could be. There's a cost to relocating. They're not portable. They're movable. If that's a good term.
Got it. So we can't put them on state highways, so they can't go on 193 and they can't go on
we mount
Kenilworth.
them to local roads.
Right. Yeah, I think that it would be an oversight not to have one of those on Hanover Parkway at Good Luck Road. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I guess I just to clarify, so that last one, location 8, should that be Mandan and Greenbelt Road?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then my other question was, because I think the glaring thing that I notice here is that they are in east and west, but they're not, for example, on Southway where the BW Parkway exits onto Central Greenbelt. There aren't actually any planned for Central Greenbelt.
I originally did, and as I kind of scaled back a little bit to try to stay in a good, healthy price range, I've had to move some of those around. Again, if the infrastructure costs I can keep low, we'll be able. The cameras themselves are not very expensive. It's a lot of the infrastructure cost that's the big price point. And so again, these are tentative locations. Some of them may shift based on need, but these are tentative locations where we currently propose to put them. There are other locations that we have looked at, like Southway at Greenbelt Road, but just at this point didn't have the funding for that one.
So this is a briefing, and the policy part's going to go by PSAC, or any other advisory boards going to look at this?
Not currently, no, sir.
And just in terms of the timeline, Mr. City Manager, when would we be purchasing the units, and Chief, when would you like to be operational with this plan?
We initially proposed to council that we would have this program up and running by December. It's a 6-month lead time, and we're committing to that December timeline.
Okay, appreciate the update. Any questions for the chief? I think there's going to be some discussion about the sites, but
absolutely,
other than that, yeah.
I just had one more thing that I also want to make sure that we have really good communication with residents about this. So, and I think that means working with the PIO from the police department as well as the city PIO. But I think having graphics that explain what these are, what's happening with the data, all of these things that are in the memo, like that the data gets kept for 24 hours, before then it's only accessible through that, MCAC, and things like what is the retention schedule even there? How can it be accessed? That the only way it can be accessed is if a police officer or other law enforcement officer makes a request. I just think that I want to make sure we're informing people, not in this long memo, but in succinct social media newsletter things. That's just a point to make that I think you answered most of the questions that I had here. I just want to make sure we have a good plan for telling people about it.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the things that I'm working on now is, and at some point I'll get the dates out to you, I'm working on a series of community meetings for the fall season. And at those meetings, we'll make presentations about the systems and what the effect is and what they look like. And where the data will go and make sure that residents get all that information in person, and then we can also post some recordings of that to our social media sites.
Yeah, but even more succinct than that, I'm thinking,
Okay.
you know, once one's installed, have Rico go and stand in front of one and explain, or film you saying, hey, this is a license plate reader camera. This is what they do. I just think we need to be aware that people ingest information in very small bites sometimes, and we don't necessarily, they're not going to necessarily come to a community meeting or even watch a community meeting online, but they might watch a 2-minute video that explains what the program is and hits the highlights.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we need for our residents, because that people would watch. An hour-long community meeting, yeah, some people will, not everybody will.
We can definitely make that happen.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm looking forward to the feedback and comments. I'm sure that PSAC will have a few thoughts. So yeah, thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So before you go, though, we're going to move on to item number 12. Was that item number 12? Which is the next item on the agenda. And that would be authorizing the city manager to execute a 5-year contract with Axon Enterprises for the body-worn cameras, the digital evidence management, the tasers, and related training. So the police department is recommending the extension of our existing contract with Axon Enterprises Incorporated of Scottsdale, Arizona. The recommended extension is for a 5-year term. Axon has proven to be a reliable solution for our body-worn camera program, digital evidence management, and less than lethal weapons. Through this contract extension, the department will be able to maintain our successful body-worn camera program, which includes our hardware, licensing, data storage, and related equipment. And the contract warranties all of the equipment and technology, as well as provides upgrades to all software, hardware at the start of the new contract and midpoint. In addition, the current features, the department will have access to new features that allow for enhanced efficiency and transparency. Under this contract, the department's current less than lethal taser weapons will be upgraded to the newest version available, the Taser 10. This technology is proven much more effective in restraining combative subjects and preventing the need for force escalation. All of the less than lethal training, taser training and equipment is provided under the contract. This contract also includes a state-of-the-art virtual reality training system which allows for advanced and progressive de-escalation training for officers. The contribution of the latest less-than-lethal weapons and advanced de-escalation training will best prepare our officers to resolve difficult and high-stress situations in the safest manner possible. So the total cost of the 5-year contract is $737,151.90. The year one cost is $136,774.58, which has been allocated into the approved 2025 budget. So the staff recommendation is council to authorize the city manager to execute this 5-year contract with Axon Enterprises for the body-worn cameras, digital evidence management, and less than lethal weapons associated training at a cost of $737,151.90. And that year one cost, once again, is $136,774.58, which is already in the budget. So, Chief, we've been working with Axon for a number of years, and I believe our police department was one of the first in the state of Maryland municipal police departments to actually begin using body cameras. And so we were working, I think the company may have changed names somewhere along the line. But this is a long partnership. Are we just coming out of a 5-year contract and going into a new one?
Yes, that's correct. Our current contract is expiring at the end of this year, and in order to get enough lead time to get the equipment on hand for the start of the new one, we're presenting this now. But I'm going to let Deputy Chief White, he's been the lead on body cameras since about 2016 when we got the program initially, so I'll let him elaborate and answer your technical questions.
Thank you so much. Deputy Chief White, welcome.
Council, good evening again.
Yeah. So the 5-year contract, it's a pretty large amount. It's it's $737,000, close to $1 million. So Just in terms of the new contract, in talking with other municipalities throughout Prince George's County and around the state, they've mentioned that the storage cost for keeping the videos has gone up, escalated quite a bit. So just in terms of this contract as compared to the last contract, which areas have increased the most?
Yeah, so storage of the data is one of the large components of any type of digital evidence management. You have to store the data. We have retention schedules set and requirements that we have to keep all evidence, photos, videos, in-car camera, body-worn camera, TASER records and downloads, have to keep them for time. So that storage does cost money. And of course, the other option is to maintain hardware on site through servers that are maintained by our in-house IT staff. In consultation with them initially, and as well as when we were looking to renew this contract, it's not an option that they were in a position to be able to move forward with. The other challenge with that is our staff in-house at the police department to be able to manage the digital evidence administration with releasing of body camera to the state's attorney's office, quality control, supervisor review. That would all require us to be able to have a management system connected with that in-house storage. When, based on what we have now, if we were to move away from that to a on-premise storage location, it would require us to bring on additional staff to be able to manage what we now have. So the other component of this,
So how many staff currently manage that
right
evidence?
now we have one dedicated staff member to our technology in-house at the police department. She's responsible for all things related to the body-worn camera program.
She's a civilian or is she a sworn?
She's a
officer?
civilian.
Okay,
She's a civilian
understood.
employee.
Okay. Please continue.
Yep. So as part of this contract, again, one of the things that is upgraded is the new less than lethal TASER. Everybody's familiar with the TASER weapons. The TASER 10 is the newest model of that. The police department, Greenbelt Police Department, started with the M26 back in the early 2000s, upgraded to the X26, the X26P, the TASER 7, and now the TASER 10 is the newest model. One of the key things with the TASER 10 that was a limitation on prior models was you basically had one cartridge in one opportunity if you were challenged with an active aggressive subject to fire that cartridge and hope that both probes connected to the person to be able to de-escalate and get them in safely, preventing injury to them and the officer. What the new TASER 10 allows is you actually have 10 opportunities to make that connection with the combative subject. So under that high stress environment, clothing limitations, it allows the officer additional opportunities at hand to be able to resolve that without having to escalate to a higher level of force. And the second thing that is improved is also the distance in which you can utilize that less than lethal weapon. There is actually a traditionally 25 feet was the distance that you could use the traditional TASER weapons from. They just had a TASER deployment with the TASER 10 at 45 feet, so almost twice the distance that you can have that distance and try to de-escalate a situation, but if it needs to be able to use that to resolve a situation. The third and final piece with this that we don't currently have is the virtual reality system. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Oculus type headsets. Not only do these have training for the officers for mental health response, so it actually puts the officer in a situation where they can see a police-related encounter with them being a hearing impaired individual or someone that has hearing impairment, someone who has various mental health conditions or experiencing episodes related to their mental health. So it really allows the officer to get an experience to understand when they go into a situation like this and have some empathy for why somebody may be reacting the way that they are. The second part of that is training scenarios where it puts the officers in a use of force situation to be able to use their de-escalation tactics and be in that situation. Traditionally, law enforcement force simulators would take up a room about this big with a large screen, projectors, and now with the evolution of technology with the headsets, the officers can run it in a small room at the police department, and with donning that headset and the simulated equipment that the officer has on them for that is able to go through those scenarios. And from an instructional standpoint, the amount of value that comes from that is great. So those are kind of the main highlights of this new contract, and why we're looking to move forward and continue our partnership with Axon and continue our program with them. The last thing I will say before any questions I'll be glad to answer is with technology, as you all know, it's rare that you have flawless technology, especially we started this program in 2016. The one thing I will say is we have had no major issues with any of this technology. The minor issues that we've had come up, the warranties and the relationship that we have with Taser, we call them up, they send us a replacement, we send the damaged equipment back, and if they can't fix it or repair it, we keep the replacement that they sent us. At no time have we been out of service with our body-worn camera program. At no time has our data been compromised. At no time have we been unable to access our video recordings or our digital evidence for court or for internal investigations or force reviews or anything. So we're very happy with what we have, and that's why we're making the recommendation to continue with what we have despite the additional cost.
Yeah, appreciate that. So just a couple of quick questions before, I'm sure that my peers on council also have a few questions. But so thinking back, and once again, talking with our sister municipalities, one of the reasons why our storage costs were lower than other municipalities is we bundled the purchase, the tasers with the body cameras, and they offered to upgrade all of the equipment as well. So is this going to continue, or now are we on par with the other municipalities just in terms of paying the full price, even though we're still bundling the tasers with the cameras and the storage?
So we are still bundling, and we are still getting a significant discount based off of the bundling. I will say I think what the increase is compared to other municipalities, I'd have to look, but we were dealing with 2017 pricing, which we did do a mid-year upgrade to that contract around 2019, and now that we're coming up on the end of that 5-year, that's a long time as we all unfortunately are aware of the increase in costs from over COVID, coming out of COVID, and now 5 years later. So the cost rising, does it bring us on par? I think that would depend on when those contracts with those other municipalities. But if we were looking at a cost of a municipality renewing their contract right now at the same time, if they were not bundling, we would be saving based on us bundling based on that, if that makes sense.
Let's pivot to some questions from council. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, I appreciate it. I was wondering, it might not even be related to this, but I mean, it is, because do you have any of the devices that it like shoots a I guess 2 projectiles and it wraps or like around your legs or whatever it is? Is that something that you all have, or?
So the device is called a
I don't even know what you call it.
It's called a bowler
Ms.
wrap.
Pope was asking
BOLA
about
wrap.
that,
yeah.
We actually had them out at our station to do a demo about 3 years ago with their original version.
Okay.
We were not very impressed with some of the limitations with them. They came out with a second version. We had them out about 4 months ago to do a demo. There is obviously a cost related to them. We're trying to negotiate with them now to see if we could get a test model to be able to test and evaluate and see the reliability, but it is something that
It seems like it would be, quite a step down from the taser in regards to how dangerous it is, how much danger it's putting the person in that you're trying to subdue. I know the tasers can be an issue, but that looks like it would be a little more humane and a little more safe to me.
So the concept is great.
Yeah. If it works, I don't know.
Theory and practicality, there's a lot of
Yeah.
challenges.
If it will
It's a
work.
great concept, and I
Yeah.
think as it continues to evolve,
Yeah.
they've made a great stride from their version 1 to their version 2, and that's why we'd like to get that in hand. The more tools that our officers can have at their disposal to use the least amount of force necessary to affect it is what we all want, and we'll look at any tool that's there, and if we can make it be a benefit to our officers and our community in the way that we police, absolutely.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Councilmember Niesel.
I have no questions. I think this sounds like a wonderful plan for the safety of our police officers and our community, and I would like to move that we authorize the city manager to execute a 5-year contract with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for body-worn cameras, digital evidence management, tasers, and related training.
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you. Other questions? I have a question about the tasers, the upgrade from being able to shoot one set of projectiles as opposed to 10. So in reviewing and looking at this equipment, is there some way of limiting the number, to shoot 10 of these taser things one after the other in a really stressful situation? Seems like it could be dangerous somehow. So what are your thoughts about that? Are there some hardware or software controls or limitations on how many times this thing would fire?
There are. So just like the traditional tasers, you need 2 probes to make that electrical connection. Under the old legacy models, it fires both probes at the same time. So you have to be able to, depending on if the person is moving, be able to target and aim the device to send out both probes, which are coming out at a distance, and get both of those probes to make contact with the individual. What the new model allows you to do is it fires 1 probe at a time. So what is traditional, very similar training to the training officers get in firearms targeting, it's the same type of targeting where you're firing 1 projectile at a time, so you're better able to target as opposed to 2 probes flying through there at the same time. If you fire 2 and 1 does not make a connection, you're able to follow up to fire a 3rd probe, and then when it does connect, there's an audible tone and it activates the device for that 5-second cycle. So what it allows the officer to do then is if there are multiple subjects, they could then use the device for multiple combative subjects or just simply deploy the 2 or 3 depending on how many probes are necessary.
Okay, and it's the same electrical charge and the same duration of the charge. And you would pull the trigger or push the button once, or you would push it for each probe?
Push it for each probe. Yep. So in each probe, the officer, just like any other force option, has to justify that it was necessary and proportional based on the force or resistance that was being, it has to be within our policy. So they can't just like now, if they're going to deploy a taser, they have to be within compliance of the policy and state law.
Okay. And with the cameras, the upgrades to the body cameras, so when an officer gets out of their car and actually their camera is activated immediately as soon as they step out of their car towards an incident. And when one officer's camera is activated, the other ones in the vicinity, are there, what I'm really asking is, are there some upgrades to the technology? And if you could just concisely describe them.
Yeah, you're pretty close to exactly what it does. So there's, for lack of a better term, Bluetooth triggers, triggering devices to activate cameras. And as you know, Bluetooth operates, think about your headphones if you use them with your cell phone. If you set your phone down, you have your headphones in, and you walk about 50 feet away, you're going to start having some connection issues with your Bluetooth. So it's the same thing with the camera. We have devices on the officers' holsters, on their taser devices, on the lights on their car when they activate their lights, and that activates the camera and any camera within 50 feet. So not only does it activate the body cameras, it also activate any in-car cameras that are within the location and begin recording that. So it takes some of the potential for an officer in a high-stress situation. An officer's driving down the street and encounters a situation, they get out of the car and have to draw their firearm, that will automatically activate the camera. If they turn their emergency lights on, it activates the camera. If they draw their taser, it activates the camera. So a lot of built-in redundancy for those high-stress environments that it automatically activates the camera. So the officer, it's one less thing that if they forget to manually activate it, it does it automatically.
Are there any additional fail-safes if an officer accidentally deactivates the camera?
So the new one of the things with the newer upgraded camera is it's more difficult for the officer to accidentally deactivate the camera. On the earlier versions, one of the things that was learned not only by us but across the country was that if you're in a physical struggle with a subject and they're pressed against that body camera and they're pressed against it for that 2 seconds, it can deactivate the camera. The new model has been modified, so that is less of an issue. Like, I won't say that it cannot happen, but it's less of a potential for that. And we continue to give feedback to Axon and ways that they can improve the technology for the officers.
Appreciate that. Thank you for answering my questions. Is there anybody online with a question or concern? Yes, City Manager.
I have one comment, Mr. Mayor. The title is for a 5-year contract. What council is authorizing from an appropriations perspective is a 1-year appropriation as it's included in our budget, and we made that modification the second time around with the budget this fiscal year. You'll see that appropriation in future fiscal years for council's approval.
Okay.
And that's in keeping with Section 59 of our charter that requires contracts that are beyond 1 year are to be done by ordinance, and that's specifically to appropriations. The appropriations for this contract's coming out of this year, and it's only for 1 year.
So, Councilmember Niesel, will you accept that language as a friendly amendment? And Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Okay. We do have a question here. Mr. Orleans, please.
Orleans still. I have had occasion to ask Deputy Chief White, back when he was still just Captain White, several times about a roadshow that Verizon and Axon, I think, partner with, touring the country, selling their toys and whatnot. And I was told that Greenbelt's never participated, if I remember correctly. They frequently will have them in Prince George's County at the Showplace Arena. But over the years, just anecdotally, one can't help but notice that Greenbelt is increasingly contracting for more and more police-related technology. And it may be that we need all or some of this technology. I'm not the person to answer that question, but I am someone who's interested in knowing how much we are investing, and it seems to me increasingly investing in capital costs and operating costs and storage costs in police-related technology. Axon apparently will store the body camera footage. Very nice of them, at cost, of course. But with regard to license plate readers, an earlier item tonight and in the past, I don't know if the license plate readings are stored and who stores them. And I don't know who we're purchasing. I didn't have a chance to look at the full agenda, but I don't know who we're procuring the license plate readers that council approved earlier tonight from. Is it Axon? Well, I'm glad to hear that. Note for the record that Chief is signaling no. But my question, I guess, is for council, but specifically for the city manager. If we could have a report at some point in the near future, how many police technology companies the city of Greenbelt contracts with and for what, and associated costs, and if it's not too difficult, to go back just 5 years so that residents would have, if they choose to, will have a sense of whether or not I'm correct in thinking that we're spending more and more for more technology. So that's a request for council, but specifically for the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you, Mr. Salmon, would you like to?
I can come back with a more report, the in-depth report. The vendors are listed as part of the negotiated purchase price agreement, so the majority of those vendors are there for the police department. So we can provide that data, that information, should council wish.
Very good, very good. Is there any additional discussion? Let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the measure passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that's going to bring us to item number 18, which is opposition to federal funding cuts for activities related to DEI and climate change. And this is an item added by Mayor Pro Tem Weaver.
Yep.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Did I skip over something?
You did. Earlier in the agenda, you moved items 14 and 15 to the end of the meeting, so that takes us back to 16.
Oh, back to
which is
16.
meetings.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, yes. So item number 16, this has to do with the Labor Day Festival and the fact that there is, because the carnival setup, there's no parking around the municipal building. So according to our charter or council rules, we have to actually make a motion to hold the meeting that will take place on the 26th and the 28th virtually on Zoom. And that's because parking around the building and the community center lots is going to be is not going to be available for the public, for council, for staff. So would one of you like to make a motion that we hold the meeting on the 26th and on Wednesday, August 28th at 7:30 p.m. to hold those virtually as opposed to in person?
I can move that we hold the meeting scheduled for Monday, August 26th and Monday, August 28th at 7:30 be held virtually via Zoom.
Thank you. Is there a second?
The second.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem has seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Hook you up, Mr. Roberts. Okay, well, that brings us to item number 18, which is opposition to federal funding cuts for activities related to DEI and climate change. And this is an item brought to the attention by Mayor Pro Tem Weaver. Mayor Pro Tem Weaver, why don't you frame this and set us up?
Yeah, so this is the what I mentioned as an information item last Wednesday. The email came in on Wednesday. It came through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to Green Aces, asking the city to sign on to a letter objecting to cuts proposed to federal funding opportunities specifically, so potentially affecting the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and certain federal grant opportunities. It's specifically restricting, it's proposed language by House Republicans restricting cutting funding or restricting funding for activities related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and climate change. So it could affect funding projects that we might wish to apply for from the federal government. So this was, and it has been, it's noted in here, there's not been time to have for Green Aces to have a meeting on this, but there was an email poll taken, and I believe it was unanimous that all of the Green Aces members agreed with council signing on to this letter. And the full text of the letter was linked and included in the packet. And I think it's pretty clear that we have indicated a pretty strong commitment in both of these areas. We have various funding projects that we're doing towards climate change mitigation and resilience, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, I just put a couple examples in the background information that I wrote up. Talking about electric vehicle acquisition and infrastructure, but that's just one example. Carbon reduction goals, our DEI audit that's underway. So clearly, I think as a city, we've already demonstrated that these areas are important to us. And so it would be detrimental to our efforts to seek federal funding if there's language restricting those projects included in the federal government budget for the next fiscal year budget. So, what I propose, what I move is that that council should officially sign on to this letter, this joint letter in opposition to restrictions on federal funding for DEI and climate change.
Second.
Okay. One thing in the background information for this, there is a reference to a political party. And, you know, we are strictly nonpartisan. So, you know, I think it is an error to actually call out any particular party.
It's a factual statement that they are the ones proposing those language.
Where I stand based on my personal affiliations and what I do. I'm just pointing out that that's an error.
Well, it is the text
but-
from the email, so it is copied directly from the text I received.
well, it should have been modified, but is there any other discussion about signing on to this? Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Let's see, now that's going to take us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 19, or was item number 19. Authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for file scanning project to digitize records from the administrative and finance offices. This is a memo from Mr. Samarone, drafted on the 12th, today. So it has to do with records digitization services. So, Mr. Samarone, are we hiring a contractor to assist? I've been in the administration suite of offices there, and there's been quite a bit of just reorganizing how the office is, and as a part of that, there's a need to actually relocate some of those records, and the digital format seems to be most appropriate. So are we doing this ourselves, or is a firm coming to help us?
We're hiring a firm, Mr. Mayor. This is part of not just optimizing the space, but it's part of our modernization strategy, which is to digitize these records and make good use of them and in a more accessible format. We received our first test box. Before we would bring this contract for approval to council, we wanted to get a test box completed by the vendor. And we're happy with the test box that was sent. They digitized that. They've loaded into a site called SkySite for shared access. I've since uploaded that those drawers or that filing system that they sent us to our SharePoint, and it's working well. So it's creating more space in what is already a constrained space so that we could add more desk stations there. So we'll be able to take the city manager suite from a 2-workstation space to 4-workstation space. And we're able to do that by removing, how many boxes, Tim, we have in there?
I think we have close to 70 just upstairs, and Bertha's expecting probably 80. The other thing I want to point out is those file cabinets right now, the only way to figure out what's in them is to open the drawer and just page and page and page through. All of these documents are OCR readable, so we can search for a word, you can search for a name, you can search for a concept, and it will search for the entire thing and pull every document that has it. And then when you pull the document up, it's readable. You can then copy and paste it into Word. You can reuse it. Right now, we have, the only way to know what's in those drawers is literally to open them up and just look through them. So it's also it's a great automation tool and makes all of our records far more accessible to staff and council and the residents going forward.
Yeah, if I could comment, this is in fact a huge step forward. And also by having a firm do it for us quickly, it means that this information, the files, the history, which has not really been accessible previously, will now be a lot easier to get to. So in the proposal, if you could succinctly talk about how right now it's internal, the files are internal, but some aspects of the file system or a broader look at what we're doing with these records and archives, I suppose the public might have some access, but I was going to ask just about how the information is being tagged and cross-referenced or indexed so that it is accessible.
There's a Dewey Decimal type system that was designed many years ago in the city manager's office. So the current filing nomenclature is following the Dewey Decimal system that was incorporated in the office. So it lists items and in series by hundreds of numbers. So items 100 are general correspondences and reports. And then within the 100 series, there's specific documents about easements, contracts, and whatnot. I could not find, other than the listing of the Dewey Decimal System and its corresponding titles, a reasoning for that system. But for the digitized file, we're filing that nomenclature with the technology of OCR, which is optical character recognition. It makes it readable files. The file itself is tagged with that text itself, and we could do further tagging depending on the type of storage system we use, such as SharePoint. SharePoint allows for tagging of the individual PDF files, but we could also create lists of files. So we can create them in columns and designate notes and numerous metadata information to each file. The site or the software that the vendor has provided, the SkySite, allows something similar. Laserfish allows something similar. We're able to replicate a lot of that, those attributes of those environments in SharePoint. So we're moving everything over to SharePoint. There'll be other systems that will store files. Council has previously approved the HRIS system, so all those personnel forms, direct deposit forms, all those administrative forms that employees sign, those will go over to the HRIS system, so they will not be stored in SharePoint. The accounting software contains copies of contracts, invoices, and those documents will exist in the financial system. What will live in the SharePoint will be these other reports, correspondences, and files. So to answer your question, metadata that we tagged, and as the need arises to further tag or associate files, we're able to do that in the virtual space.
That is so important, and just being able to overlay tags and keywords and actually avoiding a situation like we have in the current search function in our website where because of keywords or because of a Dewey Decimal System, the naming conventions, it's really just about impossible to search for a particular document because you get too many results.
Right.
So, and you mentioned it's going to come over to SharePoint. So are the documents ultimately going to be on our servers, or are they going to remain on the ArcNet on the Sky? Is it Skynet? It's not Skynet.
No, it's not Skynet. They're going to be on Microsoft servers. We're using the Office 365, Microsoft 365 platform, and that includes the SharePoint.
So it's on our servers, and it's not an ongoing cost on the external.
It's on Microsoft servers. So we've moved our email in Microsoft 365 environment to the cloud. So we're no longer hosting that on site. There's advantages to that, and that is that there's backup redundancies with Microsoft. So we don't have to worry about that piece of the puzzle. It is subscription based, so we have to continue paying our fees. But the reality is we're unlikely to move from a Microsoft environment. There's other competing environments, such as Google Suites, but I do not see us going over to Google Suites. I think Microsoft it's here to stay in local government.
I would say so. It'd be nice to have some more choices, but that's the reality. Jenny, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask. You note on here that they'll be destroying the records. That's something that they'll be in charge of, just destroying the records. That was my first question. My second question was if you had any kind of sort of time frame in which you felt like this might be completed.
On destroying records, yes, eventually, in accordance to our retention policy. As you know, we're working on a records retention policy. Our records retention policies go back to 1990. Our newest record retention policy is dated for the police department 2009. So we're just a little bit behind on the records retention policy. As we update that policy, we'll then destroy files. The benefit, one of the things we liked about this contractor is that they will hold on to those boxes until we decide what to do with them. And we'll do two options with those files. One is destroy them, or actually three options. They can be sent back to us, and we will archive them and store them somewhere, or things that are to be sent to the state archival office will be sent directly from them to the state archive office for long-term storage. But we'll do it in accordance to our retention policy. Now, there are some things that we've seen there that we know we sent that should have been deleted, but we just can't go through all those boxes to destroy those documents, such as pamphlets, newsletters, things that aren't even our records.
I've seen the boxes. It's extensive.
So So I think that was your first question. There was a second question?
About how long do you think the digitization project is going to take?
I don't have a timeline, but I can certainly get back to you as soon as they get the final count of boxes. Then I'll just ask them how long it'll take them to do it. The test box didn't take very long at all, so they can get through the boxes fairly quickly. But we're probably going to send them roughly 150. And I think it's two. One file drawer is 2 boxes, so that kind of gives you a scope for how many documents. And most of them are single-sided, black and white. The other nice thing about this company is that it auto detects color, so it'll save it in color when it needs to. It'll scan it in black and white otherwise, which helps with file size when it gets back to us. So we're not having extra file size issues when we're trying to upload it to SharePoint.
The standard is archival standard 300 DPI, so it's meeting that archival quality standard.
You guys and city staff will be responsible for uploading those files. Is that correct?
For uploading them to SharePoint, it's essentially a copy and paste mechanism, or just drag and drop. Yeah, so I downloaded. I got sent a link for the box that was scanned. I hit download. It's on my download folder. I could just drag it over. Now I was hesitant to drag it over because there's some files that are confidential, and I'm working with Brian Kennel to create access policies on some things that are confidential. Now, most of those records are public records, and anyone with access to a SharePoint is going to have access to the files. But we do need to preserve confidentiality on things that are litigation, personnel, things that fall within confidentiality requirements. Things like HR things, we might just take those out of there and put them with HR files.
Hey, I appreciate your question about the time frame. So, Mr. George, when you're asking, I'm getting really leery about these open-ended contracts. So when they give you a date, if we could come up with some way of holding them to that date. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
There's actually a timeline on page 148 of the packet, 29 of the proposal. Now, I think that we're not quite at that point because they listed pre-production starting August 1st. So I guess we're a little bit behind that, but then they actually they propose project completion by December 31st under that timeline. So I think they actually did provide a timeline as part of their proposal, a proposed timeline. So that sounds like about 4 months. So if they don't get started until September 1st instead of August 1st, then I guess we're looking at maybe end of January. So
let's hold them to that.
The time sensitivity is to get those boxes out of there. Many of these files have not been accessed in a long time. But we'll get it done.
Unfortunately, however long it takes them to scan it once they're out, once we ship them to them and they have the storage problem instead of us.
Right.
But the other questions, I think you addressed most of the questions I had. I wondered about the SkySite archive, but it sounds like we are not taking advantage of that service, the SkySite archive that was listed.
I don't see the value of it. I looked through the brochure. I haven't had a chance to go in and play with it myself. We did get a demo. I don't see the value of paying on a per user basis for a system that we already have.
Yeah, that
Now,
makes sense.
If we were using there are 2 forms of using that SkySite. One is for archiving content that's static, that doesn't change. We have SharePoint that could do it. In fact, SharePoint can do not just content archiving, but document creation and version control. If we're using SkySite for document generation, changes, and tracking all those changes, such as construction files, there's so many different documents, it might be worth it, but we're not using the repository in that way. We're using it for archiving static content.
And Mr. George answered the other question because they are going to be searchable PDFs, it sounds like, so that'll be really helpful. And then I guess the other question, which again you already sort of touched on, was so there's not going to be any review ahead of time in terms of what we send, but are you planning to review afterwards to remove things that are not actually our records from the digital files after the fact?
So the part of the review process, we did do a very preliminary review. Bonita and myself went through some of the files and identified templates that were blank, certificates that were blank. And so we took those out because they were just taking up a lot of space. There were things that were clearly not a record. And so we're confident in just taking that out. There are other files in there that are a type of record, and we were cautious to not remove any of those records because we need to follow the records retention policy. So it adds to the volume. I think if we were to strictly apply the records retention policy as we have it, we wouldn't be sending the number of boxes that we're sending. But it requires a time commitment, but there's also a risk. We know that our records retention policy is outdated.
But I guess then part of the plan of developing that records retention policy, will that be to go through then these digital files afterwards? And if there are some that slip through that are not really records, that are, a brochure from somewhere that you just, isn't something that we need to keep, or something that no longer needs to be kept, there's going to be, that's going to be staff time afterwards to go through and consolidate and clean up the records based on the retention policy?
Correct. And the environment that we've created on SharePoint, Brian Kennel created a SharePoint site that's called a contact archive template using SharePoint that allows for policies to be set at the file level. So when you open a file, you can designate its record retention policy. So if you say this is a correspondence that can be deleted after 1 year, just click on that and the system will purge that document based on the retention policy assigned to it. So we can click on it and it will be gone in that period. Or we could manually delete it.
And then I guess the final thing is, as we're looking at the codification and the new website and things like that, hopefully this will make it easier then for things that we do want to make accessible, not just through SharePoint internally to employees, but also more publicly. It may help us make some of those archives more accessible, the things that would be relevant to the public. Hopefully this will allow us to make maybe some of those documents more readily accessible for people trying to do research online about the history of Greenbelt and these boxes of documents that are going back a ways.
Yes, and you touch on an area of work that we've yet to settle on. One of the systems we're looking at is for agenda management, and we received a demo from Unicode that should we expand our services with Unicode, such as agenda planning, they have a document library module to Unicode that allows for the searching of memos and supplemental information that's attached to a council activity, such as a resolution or an ordinance or charter amendment. So when someone's looking for council actions, any files associated with that meeting or council action will be searched in that system. But they're currently our SharePoint system does not integrate with the agenda packets.
Okay.
So they're the council packets. In the future, they could if we adopt a document library with a provider such as the Unicode. Okay. Benita, did I miss anything on that? Okay.
Okay. Any questions online? We have a question. Mr. Orleans, please.
Thank you. I will die sooner than later an analog man. I'm not in favor of digitizing anything, actually, but my solution to a full file cabinet drawer is to obtain another file cabinet. I realize no one is likely to agree with me on this. However, I was interested in Mr. Solomon's discussion of the question of what will be done once things are digitized. And if I understood him correctly, one possibility is just to destroy them. A second possibility is them to be sent to the state archives. I would think they would have an interest. I don't know. I didn't actually hear what the third option was, but if I may make a suggestion, a combination of interested staff from the News Review, I don't know if this gentleman is from the News Review, but a combination of staff of News Review folks and Friends of the Greenbelt Museum and the ad hoc Greenbelt historian history buffs, I'm sure there are many in town, should be given the opportunity to review anything that would be considered to be destroyed. And even unless something is of necessity going to the state archives, even before that option is advanced, and they would make the decision as to whether or not to keep it or not, that all such information other than the confidential stuff be offered to a collection of folks in Greenbelt who might like the opportunity to review what's in our bursting file drawers. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So let's go ahead and take a vote. Did someone make a motion?
No, but I can,
Go ahead.
I'm happy to make a motion. I move that we approve the city administration entering into a contract with eARC to provide file collection, file scanning, and data integration for files in the city's municipal building, primarily in the administration and finance departments.
I'll second that. So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember McKinney. We certainly heard your aye. Hey, that's going to take us to item number 20, which was pulled off the consent agenda, authorization of engine rebuild replacement for vehicle 607. This is from a memorandum from Acting Public Works Director Brian Kim on July the 10th, 2024. Earlier this year, Unit 607, a 2018 Chevy Tahoe assigned to the K9 unit, was brought in due to a check engine light. Upon initial inspection by our shop supervisor, it was determined that the issues exceeded our diagnostic capacities. Consequently, the vehicle was forwarded to Sport Chevrolet in Silver Spring for further assessment, and the service advisor at Sport Chevrolet has identified extensive repairs necessary, including replacement of the engine long block assembly, the fuel lines, injector seals, and miscellaneous gaskets. So staff is seeking council's authorization for the city manager to approve the proposal from Sports Chevrolet of Silver Spring totaling $16,396 to proceed with the required engine rebuild and replacement for Unit 607. Mr. Roberts, you had asked to pull this off the consent agenda. Please.
I had a couple of questions, I was just wondering, how do we go from a check engine light to a $16,000 engine replacement? So I'm just wondering what's wrong with the truck.
Sounds like the engine needs to be
We
rebuilt.
received the report, and Brian Kim couldn't be here tonight, or we didn't expect this to come off, but
Not run or ran bad or didn't have any oil pressure or, what's the matter with it?
yeah, Deputy
Because,
Chief White, do you have details?
I know the service guys up at Sport, and they'll sell you anything that you'll buy. And so I'm just wondering, how we got to this.
Do you have any details on what's wrong with the
Yes,
vehicle?
I am not a mechanic, first off.
Yeah.
I make no assertions of that. But this vehicle is a K9 vehicle. One of the things with the K9 vehicles that's a little more unusual than other vehicles is because the dog is inside the car for over 8 hours a day. It's constantly idling. This vehicle had some continual problems that went back and forth to the shop a few times. They get the check engine light to go off. They would put it back in service. It would come back on. They'd bring it down. So back in January, when this was put out again for diagnostics, they said, well, we can't figure out what's going on with it. We'll send it to Sport Chevrolet. They told us that this requires an engine repair, and weighing the options of us needing the vehicle. This is the only other K9 vehicle that we have. We have one new vehicle, and this is the spare K9 vehicle. The options with not having any money allocated in this fiscal year for vehicles, that we could say, okay, we're going to dedicate one of these new vehicles to a K9 vehicle. The $16,000 fee for the engine replacement that would give us theoretically another 100,000 plus miles out of this vehicle. We thought between us and Public Works was a good investment rather than a $60,000 to $70,000 replacement cost for a new vehicle.
But how many miles has it got on it? And
97.
It's 97,000. So that's not a lot.
Yeah,
I see GMs with hundreds of thousands of miles. So, but I'm wondering, how does it get from a check? Was the car conking out or stopping or?
I wasn't driving it. I just know that it was not in drivable.
If it's a backup, my problem is the Sports Chevrolet will tell you anything, and they'll charge you anything. And if you're dumb enough to take that, then you are. And so personally, you know, you can buy a new engine, complete engine for this. I assume it's probably a 350 or whatever. It's a V8, right?
Yeah, I don't know. What I'll tell
Yeah.
you is our public works folks do a great
But
job of maintaining.
you
our
can buy a
vehicles.
brand new engine for
And-
$4,000. And if we have mechanics at Public Works, they can put an engine in. If they can't put an engine in, then, you know, get a book and teach yourself as you do it. Let them expand their knowledge a little bit. But don't tell me you're going to spend $16,000 because the truck has a light on that keeps coming on. That's ludicrous, and that's a ripoff of the public. You know, to spend that much money when I know I mean I put engines and stuff all the time, and you can't have you know, a rebuild and a replacement. It's one of the two. You're going to take it out and fix the old one. That's a rebuild. You're going to put a new one, a replacement. You're putting a new engine in, and you know, I buy engines all the time. They don't cost that much, especially for GMs. If it's a, you know, unless it's, you know, a Corvette engine or something like that. But, you know, for this, I just see this as not being a good deal for the public. That's what I see. You know, regardless of what the vehicle's for, you know, and it's got to be right no matter what, no matter who's driving it. And this is a ripoff. That's all it is. Sports Chevrolet is taking advantage of you, of us, of the taxpayers. That's what they're doing.
Hey, Mr. Roberts, so did you
so
want
I
to
just
defer
want,
this until
I know
the
I
next
probably,
meeting? We got
wait
some
a
more
minute. I
information.
know I won't
Or
convince
what do you wanna-
anybody, but I wanted a chance to vote against this because this is a bad deal for the city. Let your mechanics learn something and let them fix the truck. That's the only way you learn and expand your knowledge, is to do something, not to hand it off to Sports Chevrolet or somebody else. Learn. Let your mechanics learn how to do the job. If they can't, if they're not willing to learn, then get somebody that is willing to learn, because that's the job of the mechanic, to learn.
I'm
You
not
don't
going to
know
disparage
no
our
one knows
mechanics, but let's,
everything.
you know, if
No
you
one
want to
knows
defer this
everything,
until
but
the next meeting
anybody
and get
can
more
learn.
information, we can certainly do that. But let's not.
Don't ask me to, you know, spend all this money for something that I know is a ripoff.
Miss
I've
Councilmember,
got
please.
50 years experience.
I would be willing to make a motion that we defer this so we can talk to Mr. Kim, who probably knows more about the situation than the vehicle and can talk to us a little better about it. I think I cannot claim to know anything about vehicles or engine rebuilds or repairs, and I would like to have an expert opinion on this.
Okay, well, I'll second that. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're just, you know, this came up on July the 10th in writing, so it's been a month, and I don't know if it's in storage over there at Sports Chevrolet, but we can probably wait another 2 or 3
I think
weeks.
I think it's in our shop, and you know I understand what Councilmember Roberts is getting. I get it. There's times where you got to look at what are the options. If we dedicate a mechanic or two working on this activity for days, weeks, there's other work that piles up. One person. Okay.
Okay, well, we can get the information, and so we don't have to spin our wheels, you know, endlessly.
Estimate of how much time it would take and what the equivalent hour cost of that too.
Okay. Hey, and the next item is an item that I pulled off the agenda. It's item number 22, authorizing city manager to execute contract with Granicus for website renewal. So, Public Information Officer Office received a renewal contract from Granicus Web Services for FY25 for $42,214.39. This amount will be prorated and partially refunded when we cancel the service after migrating to a new website platform, provided we give Granicus a 30-day cancellation notice. This mitigation to a new platform is expected to take 6 to 8 months. So the only reason I pulled this off of the consent agenda is, you know, it's essential that we move forward with this contract and begin working on a new website. I just find it's unconscionable for $2,214.39, given that we will be able to cancel with 30 days' notice. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, that's going to take us down to, I think, council activities probably.
We have item 14 and 15 that were moved to the bottom of the agenda. So council activities, council reports.
Unfortunately, I was not able to update the extensive number of activities. But anybody like to talk about anything in particular?
Well, I think things that other people attended with you are included on the list, but if you have others you need to add, that you can add, there's a pretty good list here. One thing I couldn't remember, Ms. Niesel, were you at the Four Cities meeting?
Yeah, I added my name to it.
Oh, okay, I'll add it here then. I couldn't remember.
Oh, I thought I had already.
You may have added it on the spreadsheet after I transferred it over to the this document. So I don't know if anyone. I will make one comment about the Creative Kids Camp performance of the Cookie Caper, which was excellent, and I believe there's a video from Gate TV online. It's really lovely, and I would encourage you to find that YouTube video and watch it because it's really fun. And I believe there's also an exhibit with some of the history that sort of related to that's in the community center. So that was really lovely. I only went to one performance, but I was going to try to go to a later one. I only made it to one.
Went on Friday myself. It was really, really beautifully done. The cookie recipe was pretty good too. I made a copy of that. So we'll leave it at that. It's been very, very busy. I'm serving on the legislative committee for the Maryland Municipal League. We had 2 meetings in June determining the priorities for MML. Also, I attended a Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments retreat, our annual retreat, and we talked a great deal about transportation and about the state of affairs at WMATA, which, if you've been reading the Washington Post, it's not really looking very good at all. It's looking quite bad 2 or 3 years from now. So we talked about some solutions and alternatives. I don't know, I could go on, but I won't. I have a really long list, and I'll add that.
Solution and alternative to Amada is Village Rides, which is through our Gives program. It's a place where I'm telling our vast audience of one that I've been volunteering for Gives to give people rides. And today, someone missed their bus, and I was like, you know what? I'm driving anyways because I had the stickers on my car, so I drove her to the mall. So, yeah, you can always be part of the change you want to see in the world.
Gives is a great organization, and Village Rides is the platform that they use to kind of get volunteers, connect the volunteers with the people that need rides. A lot of folks up at the Greenridge House can use a lift to a doctor's appointment or maybe to do some last-minute shopping. So it's a great organization. So if you go to gives.org, no, that's not it. What's that? Yeah.
You can email me, A. Niesel, at greenbeltmd.gov, and I'll get you straight in touch with Carol. She would be thrilled to have you. And this goes for any residents who may need a ride as well. Greenbelt residents can always ask and register with Gives and get a free ride to wherever they want with one of the volunteers.
And I believe people also often arrange free rides through the Greenbelt Time Bank, which I think varies how active it is, but that is another opportunity as well.
Well, let's see. And that's going to bring us to just about the end of the meeting. Item number 15, is that meetings?
Yes.
No, I think reports, and I don't know that we have any.
I don't think we have any.
Did meetings already.
Yeah.
Well, if there are no reports and we've covered everything in the agenda, I suppose if someone would make a motion, we could second it and vote, and we could close the meeting out.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? I'll second. Councilmember Pompey beat me to the point. You beat me to it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.